If you're at a South African public hospital, there's a very good chance you've been there for so long you're considering submitting a change of address form. I wanted to talk about this because I'm not sure if you've noticed, but South African public hospitals are falling apart faster than a 1995 Toyota Corolla in the hands of a teenager who just started learning how to drive. And no, I'm not even exaggerating. I wish I was. It's chaos out there. If you thought load shedding was bad, wait until you see our healthcare system. Because South African public hospitals are like Netflix when it was Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. Completely unreliable and useless. First off, let's discuss the infamous waiting rooms. Ah yes, the first circle of South African healthcare hell. Walking into a public hospital waiting room is like walking into a post-apocalyptic movie set. There's always that one screaming baby who's probably applying for a pension by the time their turn arrives. Someone coughing so hard you'd swear they've been chain smoking coal, and then the guy in the corner who insists on telling you his life story as if you even asked at all. Waiting in a public hospital is an art form. It's not just waiting, it's endurance training. I'm talking Ayanokoji White Room levels here. You are waiting for salvation, and don't even get me started on the chairs. If you've ever been lucky enough to even get one of those wobbly plastic monstrosities that feels like it might collapse at any moment, you'll know they weren't designed for comfort. They were designed for survival. Walking Dead vibes. And of course, there's always that one person who asks, who's last? Bro, we don't even know if the doctors are still alive at this point. We're all just sitting here in silent solidarity, hoping against hope that our turn will come before the next load shedding schedule. We are playing by chance here, bruv. Now let's talk about the emergencies. You'd think an emergency room would be a place where things happen quickly, wouldn't you? That's so cute. In a South African public hospital, the emergency part is more of a suggestion than a guarantee. Just imagine this to put you on game real quick. You walk in with a broken leg, you're clutching it in agony, and you're trying not to cry because you don't want to look weak in front of the other patients. You know that feeling? So you get to the reception desk and the nurse looks at you like you've just asked her to run a marathon. What's your problem? She asks, as if your leg isn't dangling at a 90-degree angle. And then comes the paperwork. Oh yes, the sacred South African hospital paperwork. You could be bleeding out, but they will not treat you until you've filled in at least 3 forms and signed something that might as well be your will. They are the Vince McMahons of the public hospital industry. They are more concerned about filing systems than your actual life. And then once you survive the waiting room and the paperwork, you'd think the hardest part was over. Wrong. Now comes the real challenge. Finding a doctor. And when I say finding, I mean literally. I wish I was joking about this. Because doctors in public hospitals are like mythical creatures. They are like Togoloshi. You hear about them, you see traces of their existence, but you're never quite sure if they're real. You see, sometimes you'll see one sprinting down the hallway like they're auditioning for the Olympics or Imbeu. But good luck trying to catch their attention. Because they are overworked, they are underpaid, and they are probably surviving on 2-minute noodles and some caffeine. And let's not forget the interns. Ah yes, the fresh-faced deer in the headlights interns who look like they googled how to be a doctor 10 minutes before their shift started. You can always tell when it's an intern treating you because they have that pure look of terror as if they are trying to remember which end of the stethoscope goes where. Ladies and gentlemen, can we talk about the equipment before I continue harassing the interns? If you've ever been to a South African public hospital, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because the equipment is so old, it probably voted 2 in the 1994 elections. Visiting an SA public hospital is like going to a braai and finding out there's no meat. It's awkward, disappointing, and you can't help but ask, what the heck is the point here? Walk into some of these hospitals and you'll notice one thing immediately. The eerie absence of basic medical equipment. Beds, stolen. Oh, wheelchairs? Oh, they're missing. Syringes? Forget it. It's as if there's a secret underground black market for hospital supplies that even Netflix couldn't make up. I mean, they've got X-ray machines that look like they belong in a museum. They have thermometers that haven't been cleaned since the Bush War. And beds that creak louder than your drunk uncle at a family braai. And the worst part? Half of it doesn't even work. Who's stealing this stuff, by the way? I imagine someone walking out with a hospital bed like it's a Pick and Pay special, acting as if they just bought a camping cot. And it's always the essentials. Have you ever noticed they never steal something useless like that dusty fax machine in the admin office? No, it always just has to be the oxygen tanks. It has to be the gloves and the bandages. At this point, if you're lucky enough to find a functioning stethoscope, you'd better protect it like your grandmother's secret recipe for her world's famous chakalaka. But let's not stop there. Nurses in these hospitals have been known to get creative. I've heard of cases where a nurse used a bottle cap as a substitute for missing equipment. I'm not joking. Like I said, I wish this was all a joke, but it's actual real. I'm being genuine here. We have MacGyver level innovation in these hospitals. And the funniest thing is, even if the government allocates funds for more of the equipment they keep stealing, it somehow never makes it to the hospitals. Have you ever noticed? It's like an episode of Survivor or Total Drama Island, but instead of being voted off the island, money just disappears. No one knows where it went. Meanwhile, the patients are lying there on hospital benches, wondering why their x-ray machine looks like it belongs in a scrapyard. And can we talk about the hospital beds themselves? The ones that haven't been stolen are either stuck in one position or squeak louder than Julius Malema at a protest with the EFF. Imagine recovering from surgery while listening to a bed frame that sounds like it's auditioning for an orchestra. Forget about resting. At this point, even the rats in that hospital are getting more sleep than the patients. And I wish I was joking. Now let's dive into the ultimate test of patience. Hey, the waiting times. My favorite part. Going to an SA public hospital and seeking medical attention is like signing up for a masterclass in time wasting. Because if you're not careful, you might leave with a diploma in queuing. Picture this. You walk into the hospital with a fever and then you think, I need to get this checked out quickly. Sweet summer child. Quickly? You're lucky if you're seen by a doctor before the next election and you want to be quick. The waiting room is its own little ecosystem, I'm telling you. It's complete with families camping out as if it's a music festival. Minus the music, fun, and the food. People are literally bringing blankets and lunch boxes to survive the ordeal. Take this as someone who goes to public hospitals. It doesn't matter how serious your condition is. You could be bleeding out and the nurse at the front desk will ask you, please take a seat and wait your turn. Hi. Meanwhile, some guy with a cough who came in last week is still there, probably learning crochet to pass the time. By the time the doctor sees you, your symptoms have either healed on their own or gotten worse. Either way, you've been waiting so long that you're questioning the meaning of life and asking the questions of the universe. So this is what Dante meant when he wrote about purgatory. I wouldn't be surprised if one of his levels of hell involves standing in line at a South African public hospital, holding your ID book, waiting to be acknowledged. And the excuses they give are a classic. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels vibes. The doctor's running late. No shit. He's probably stuck in traffic caused by a pothole the size of Soweto. Or, sorry, we are short-staffed today. What they don't mention is that they've been short-staffed since the dawn of democracy. It's like they're running a perpetual bring your patients to work day. But here's the kicker. When you finally get to see the doctor, you're in and out in 3 minutes. No detailed questions, no follow-ups, just a quick glance, a prescription for paracetamol, and a next! As if they are trying to break the world record for the fastest consultation in human history. The funniest thing though is how resilient South Africans are. You know what I'm saying? You'll still find people laughing in those waiting rooms, making jokes about the situation or what their grandmother said to them or some family drama. Because we'll turn anything into a comedy show even if our legs are fucking falling off. It's almost like a coping mechanism for South Africans because if we don't laugh, we cry. And trust me, with the state of our public hospitals, there's plenty to cry about. So I wouldn't even blame the people if they cried. You could walk in with a broken arm and the doctor would look at you apologetically and say, the x-ray machine is down. Can you come back next year? Now, let's give credit where credit is due. The nurses. The nurses, they are the real MVPs of South African healthcare, you know. They work under impossible conditions, those people. They deal with the most difficult patients and they still manage to keep the hospital running. But don't get it twisted. These angels have an attitude. You mess around and you'll get that famous South African nurse day. You know, the one that makes you feel like a naughty school kid who forgot their homework or lunch. They'll tell you to sit down and wait your turn. And you'll do it. No questions asked. Trust me. Of course, we can't forget the patients, right? Because when we talk about nurses, we gotta talk about the patients. Public hospitals are a melting pot of South African society. You've got everyone from the Goko who insists on bringing her entire family to the guy who's clearly faking an injury to get a sick note for work. And let's not forget about the hypochondriacs, as I like to call them, because there's always that one person who's convinced that they are dying of some rare disease they saw on WhatsApp. I think I've got Ebola, they whisper dramatically, clutching their chest. Meanwhile, the nurse is like, you've got gas, sit down, be humble. Now, I know I'm making jokes here, but let's be real for a second. The state of public hospitals in South Africa is no laughing matter, okay? People are suffering, lives are being lost, and the system is barely holding together. But as South Africans, we've always had this unique way of dealing with hardship. We laugh, we make jokes, like I said earlier. We find humor even in the darkest situations, because honestly, what else can we do? We've survived load shedding, potholes the size of swimming pools, and politicians who couldn't organize a braai if their lives depended on it. If anyone can survive the collapse of public hospitals, it's us, because we've seen catastrophes bigger than Ace Magashule's stomach. And speaking of Ace Magashule, we can't forget corruption. Public hospitals are no stranger to a little under the table action, young tall. You wanna skip the queue? Slip someone that 50 rand nyana. Want a blanket? That'll be another 50 rand, my guy. It's like a game show, except the price is basic human decency, young tall. And don't even get me started on the tenders. Someone's cousin is probably getting paid millions to supply the hospital with gloves that don't even fit and masks that fall apart faster than Kangimbao's relationships. So where do we go from here? Can things get worse? Honestly, yes, probably. But as South Africans, you need to keep pushing forward, right? So you'll keep laughing, yes, keep fighting and keep finding ways to survive. But when is enough gonna be enough? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to keep doing until you say enough is enough. You'll have to survive. Whether it's in a public hospital during load shedding or when the Proteas choke in yet another World Cup, you'll have to keep going. So the next time you find yourself in a South African public hospital, remember this. You're not just a patient. You're a warrior. You are a survivor. You are a legend. And if you can make it out of there in one piece, you can survive anything. So stay strong, my friend. And remember, laughter is the best medicine. Unless, of course, you're actually sick. In that case, you're probably better off going to a private hospital. Even if you don't have the money for that, I seriously recommend you try and save up for that, because public hospitals at this case is almost as unreliable as saying Vince McMahon is coming back to run wrestling. You just know it's not going to happen because of all the allegations. Speaking of Vince McMahon, I'm about to go watch John Cena's farewell tour. So, yeah, you should watch that too. Shop, shop.